Good morning. Welcome to SimWorld today, August 8th, Thursday edition of the show. I'm Marsh, joined this Thursday by J.K. Candell. Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Good morning, Marsh. It's nice to be back. We got Beanie Marsh in the building, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm letting you know now we are in for a treat this episode.
I I don't know about that. We'll find out. Good episode, though. I don't know if we're in for a treat. We got plenty to cover. We've got the Trey J Summer Jam coming up. We're going to talk about a little SimWorld Prep commitment news. But we're going to start in college, and we're going to talk college football, where SimWorld U handed down a punishment, a 4-year show cause against John Harbaugh for his alleged role in the Wolverines recruiting issues. Jason, I know there's plenty of opinions that you have on that program and him himself, so I'll let you take the floor here first.
Absolutely, Marsh. I think that this is such a BS punishment from the NCAA. Let's be real here. He's not going to be back in college for 4 years. You gave him a 4-year show cause. I don't see him leaving the Chargers anytime soon. He's in a great situation with Justin Herbert and this young nucleus. It's recruiting violations from 4 years ago. Yes, I understand you're not vacating wins or doing anything like that. But the sign stealing allegations is a whole nother ballpark of wrongdoing for this Michigan program. They did too much wrong to the point where this is a little bit light because Jim Harbaugh had inadmissible contact with recruits. Michigan was kind of scandal-ridden since the COVID-19 pandemic, and it feels like they weren't really punished because Jim Harbaugh just got the chance to jet off to the SWFL, and I don't think that is fair whatsoever. Sharon Moore is not deserves to kind of get the brunt of that punishment a bit, and he's not going to. Just, I think, frankly, really stupid, but SimWorld U football has to protect their golden boy in the Michigan Wolverines, so
what should they have done?
I think that
Vacated the championship?
I think you vacate the championship if the Stallions' allegations become true. If those allegations are true, I think you can vacate that championship.
Oh, God forbid someone does something slightly that against the rules that everyone else does. Oh, man.
Remember, it's also
That is
Michigan, so
rough.
people are losing their minds.
Well, you're losing your mind because you're a Michigan State fan. Look, I don't care. You're right.
Wrongdoing is wrongdoing, Marsh. Rules are there to be followed.
Yeah, and nobody follows them. That's why people break them literally every other season. Look, you're right on the first part. This is a fake judgment levied against somebody that's never going to ever feel the impacts of it. I mean, look, Jim Harbaugh's moved around from the pros to the college game and back to the pros now. There's every chance that he gets bored of coaching in the SWFL and wants to go back to college. I wouldn't expect that, like you said, in the next 4 years, and I wouldn't expect him to get fired in the next 4 years. I just don't like vacating championships. I don't, because look, yeah, was there recruiting violations? Sure. But vacating of championships punishes not the people that actually did the wrongdoing. And I think this latest judgment by SimWorld U collegiate branch just shows that they had nothing else that they could do. They needed to do something to show that they were making a punishment. But vacating the championship, it punishes the wrong people. It punishes the players. And because college football is so disorganized, there's just not a way to appropriately punish the people that do the wrongdoing. Were things done that broke the rules? Sure. The sign stealing allegations and whatever that ended up being, yeah, not great. Not great. I think more than anything, as we see this pop up kind of more often than we care to accept it, I think a lot of people are doing it. It's just the dumb ones that get caught. But punishing a team after the fact, in my opinion, you're punishing the people that weren't directly involved and responsible for the wrongdoing, and I think that's just not the right way to go about things.
I agree to an extent. I think that, like I said, that
But not with
championship should
Michigan.
only be vacated if those sign stealing
Because of
allegations are more
Michigan.
severe than we thought.
Because of
However,
Michigan.
let's go back to SimWorld View basketball for a second and look at that 2013 Louisville team. Their championship was vacated over something that I would consider less severe.
That's the whole point. Is that SimWorld U just does such a terrible job of officiating its members, and they don't have a clear and concise way of overruling and levying punishment against people. It's a foolish organization that tries to pass themselves off as fair and balanced when they are constantly getting the monetary advantage of student athletes or athletes at this point, and trying to stand in the way of other people making money. You know what? If people stealing signs, whatever. It's such a poorly run organization at this point that when there's going to be chaos within it, it doesn't surprise me. All right, let's move along to a little bit of Philadelphia Eagles. 2 years ago, Super Bowl runner-ups. Last season started red hot, 10-1 before ending up 11-6 and bowing out in the wild card round. JK, latest article came out from ESPN about the need to mend the relationship between head coach Nick Sirianni and quarterback Jalen Hurts. And there was, within that article, talks of how disorganized and the organization itself, just everyone was walking around with, I think the quote was, like somebody's dog died. Your take on the Philadelphia Eagles and the potential need for a better relationship between head coach and quarterback?
I think that in Philadelphia, things are not as they seem. I think this is a typical ESPN puff piece. I don't really think that there's a problem in Philly. I think there's a lot of antsiness because the Eagles did not have the season people expected last year, and I think they're going to take a drastic step forward this season, bringing in Saquon Barkley, bringing in Bryce Huff, bringing in Devin White, bringing back C.J. Gardner-Johnson, drafted Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. I think this Eagles team really loaded up, probably their best offseason with Howie Roseman at the helm as their general manager. And I think that Nick Sirianni is kind of thinking big picture, and Jalen Hurts is due for his probably best season as a passer this year. I would not be surprised at all by that. I really like Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, and I think if it comes down to it, Jalen Hurts could be an MVP candidate, but people are not ready for that conversation because I tend to see a lot of disdain among sports circles for Jalen Hurts.
I don't know if I see disdain for him. I don't think that this is also a puff piece, but I think it's also a realization by this organization, to your point, that they had a great offseason, and they now need to go out and they need to back it up. So they are, Nick Sirianni is reported in this article as having had a conversation with the team saying last season was on him. I think that's legit, and that comes from the state of, we know in SWFL you have a tiny window of which you can compete in. It is very dependent on injuries, and you've just lost the best center that you've had in your entire organization. And now you have to refill behind this offensive line that's admittedly very good around him. This is a team that knows that their window for a championship is now. And so they need to make sure that everybody is on the same page. Do I believe all of the angst within the organization? I don't know why I shouldn't. They went 10-1 and then they fell apart. That kind of tracks with all the crap they dealt with last season and all the terribleness that they looked by the end of it. But there are high expectations for this team because they are 2 years removed from a Super Bowl appearance in which they probably could have won. And then last season they faded and they retooled, to your point. They have to be good. And this is, I think, an admittance within that organization that this season means everything. That they do not have the opportunity, nor do they have the leash to not be elite. They made all the big moves that you mentioned. They are 2 years removed from a Super Bowl, and they were terrible to close out last season, right after looking absolutely fantastic to begin the year. This is a high expectation season for the Eagles, and a story like this, to me, tells me that this is a team that understands how high the expectations are. The expectations are high inside the building, and they know the championship window is right now and not for much longer after this season.
I agree with you on that one. I think the Eagles are going to return to glory this season, and They know how important the season is. Nick Sirianni, his job is probably on the line. I say if they don't reach the NFC Championship, there's a chance he gets fired. I know.
I don't know about that.
And to continue my point, I've always considered Sirianni a coach that's been carried by his good coordinators. He's had Jonathan Gannon. He's had Shane Steichen go on to be head coaches. He's got Kellen Moore as the new offensive coordinator there now. Vic Fangio is the new defensive coordinator. I think that Sirianni's kind of more of a locker room and a culture guy, and that culture needs to be brought back after a very disappointing end to last season.
I think that a lot of head coaches, I think you'd be surprised to know, are more of the culture. Once you get to the head coach role, it becomes much more an emphasis on the culture and not so much on the X's and O's. And so it's imperative. I think every head coach is carried in some instincts by their coordinator. And when you lose two of the best within, they lose them in the same season. I think you just are scrambling to then fill in the pieces. But most head coaches are, in fact, culture guys. But firing, you know what? It could happen. The Eagles have done it before, as idiotic as it was. All right, let's head over. Trey Jam is getting rolling this weekend. There are plenty of tournaments going on. We start on Friday with the Trey Jam. We'll be previewing Trey J SummerSlam. I want to combine those two. And then a couple of tournaments Saturday, couple on Sunday. Here's the roster for the Trey J SummerSlam. My God, that's a tongue twister. Daniel Irvin, Anton Moss, DJ Amer, Andre Pope Jr., Jojo Vasquez going up against Colin Storm, Kenzo Webb Storm, Nick Murray, Willerick Krause, and Aaron Gumshian. Your thoughts on what we're looking out for? Any players that stand out to you, JK?
I think there's two. The first one for me is Daniel Irvin. With formerly Cascadia, now the Scorchers, Kevon Jackson's off to SimWorld U. Daniel Irvin is going to be the go-to guy for this Scorchers team for Coach Braden Berry. I would like to see how he can handle that in a showcase like the Trey J SummerSlam. This is going to give a glimpse of which Daniel Irvin we're going to see and how he's going to handle that. And Andre Pope Jr. Dre Pope, one of the more storied coaches in SimWorld Prep. So I'm kind of intrigued to see how what kind of mentalities he's instilled into his kid. I think that's going to be an interesting one, and I think Willerick Krause is going to be in for a big season in his own right.
Certainly interesting use of the word storied. Daniel Irvin is the headliner here. He is. I agree that he's stepping into big roles for the Scorchers now, but he's also entering a second season in SimWorld Prep, and I think we've seen a lot of these really good players make that leap in year two. I think there's a lot to Daniel Irvin's game that you really have to like. Are there some rough spots to it? Sure, but he's 16 years old, 17 years old. There's plenty of time for those rough spots to be mended. So long as Irvin steps up, and I think that here's the problem. Here's the situation: is that you've got 9 other guys in this game. Maybe you could take Willerick Krause out of that since he's been around, but you've got 9 other guys that have a lot to prove, and Daniel Irvin, I think, has a lot to lose. And so I'm very intrigued to see how he responds to that. Playing against competition where there's a target on his back just because he's been around. He's been a more recognizable name than anybody else on this 10-man list. Does that mean that there's going to be bad things? No, not at all. I think that there's very high chance that he has a very good SummerSlam. Excuse me, I cannot stop that one. Tried my best. Thank you. No, I am looking forward to actually getting some actual basketball and less of this off-court high school drama that we've been dealing with. All right, last piece, just some breaking news, much as we've been doing here on SimWorld today. An update, finally, to SimWorld Prep commitment period. The SimWorld Prep commitment period will begin this Friday, tomorrow, August 9th. Officials have decided the commitment cycle will be an open period. No official deadline. So players will be signing now and on through the regular season for SimWorld Prep. So big news for those commitments. That begins here tomorrow. Plenty of recruits have hinted at maybe potentially already having something lined up. We'll see how many of that end up being true. Jake, I'd be curious to know in your reporting if any of that ends up being actual, factual, or false. But some commitment period beginning tomorrow.
Yep. That's going to be a fun one. There's a lot of players who could be going to a lot of different places. I've heard a lot of rumblings of some big team ups at a couple of SimWorld prep schools, but I'm going to keep those cards close to the vest.
Well, come on, you can't. What do you got? Give us something.
I've heard some rumblings about the Heartland Zombie Stars having a potential strong recruiting class.
Okay.
And I know that our good friend who we were just talking about, Coach Dre Pope, is in hot pursuit on the SimWorld prep recruitment cycle as well. Expect big things for the Bay Area Breakers, Heartland Zombie Stars, and Philadelphia Elite.
You got any names? You got any names, JK? Or are we just?
I will not be revealing names. A magician does not reveal his secrets. But
well, good reporters do. All right, that is the end of our show, SimWorld Today here on SimWorld TV. Jason, thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with the Blaze Man, Rick Blaze, to wrap things up. We also have some SimWorld Today news coming out tomorrow that we will share on the show. So that is our episode. Thank you all for tuning in. Jason, again, thanks for joining us. We will be back tomorrow on SimWorld TV, the only place you can see the game, be the game.